What's going on, guys? Wipe O'Brien here. And just having this thought that came across my mind as I was working today. And just kind of thinking of little things about my life. Whenever things get stressed out at work or I'm pretty tired, I've actually been pretty exhausted, but I want to say exhausted, but a lot more tired than normal. Physically speaking, I'm back in the gym 5 days a week, working out, hitting the macros, trying to working late hours this week. So I'm a little bit tired and I feel like a little exhausted, but I kind of like that feeling, you know, just kind of just having that focus again. And I don't know, I really like that feeling, but it also got me thinking, what's going to be the balance of all that because I don't want to get to a point where I burn out. And I don't think I'm anywhere near there, but it just kind of got me thinking like what are the things that I kind of what kind of calls to me in that way. And I didn't really realize this until I don't know, I don't know why, but I remember when I went to Vegas for a work conference, let's just say, and I ended up networking a lot, meeting some people there. And there was this one guy. I was talking to him, and we were just talking. The thing about networking or making connections with new people is that when you make connections with new people, you generally want to get past, as I don't want to say past surface level, but you want to kind of be a human being to that other person. You don't want to just be like another person. So, sometimes you just naturally get in the flow of conversation. I was talking to this guy, and he was saying how he's kind of going back to masters. And anyways, at some point in the conversation, I mentioned that yeah, one day I think I would like to want to go sailing. I've always I really have liked the idea of just getting on a boat, a sailboat, and going around an island or going around the sea. Not like, oh, maybe who knows, but I guess that's my fear, right? Like I don't know what's out there. I don't know what's out there in the sea. That's so vast. There's nothing that, it's almost like you don't belong there as a land dweller. Like why are you out in sea? There's so many things, but I've always been called to that. Like I always tell people before I used to go to sleep, and I used to have trouble going to sleep, sometimes as a little kid, and now into my adult years. So I'm really having trouble go to sleep. What I do is I will obviously like I'm closing my eyes, but I'll start to feed myself a vision that I'm just swimming in the middle of the ocean and there's nothing around me. And I start swimming to the bottom or start swimming, underwater around there and there's nothing around me and there's just a sound of water and waves and there's nothing. And that always like calmed and soothed me. I don't know why. And even now, I've had this wallpaper now for a year. I don't know if you guys can see it there, but it's literally just a sailboat in the middle of the ocean. And in my room, I have the same thing. I have a framed kind of like wall art poster right on top of my bed. That's just the pitch black sky with the full moon in the sailboat. And God, like, I don't know what calls me so much to that feeling. I think it's just we're just so enamored by our own daily lives and we got to make it worth something at the end of the day. A lot of people, they complain about working for somebody else for a living or being employed or working in general. And it's like, dude, you got to make it worth something. Like I was just thinking like, what do I want my next 5 years to be like? What do I want to see myself in? Thanks to a lot of the help of my family and a lot of the inspirations honestly from my father, I have a cling to, being able to buy property or buy land or buy something in the Dominican Republic. And with tech and remote work being kind of in unison and kind of envisioning and encapsulating some kind of plan, I can see how if I make connections now, upskill myself as much as possible, I can really live the life that I really want to. I don't even know if I want to buy a house in America anymore, to be honest. Maybe I'll just go all in the DR and I'll get a nice remote gig where I can just go back and forth. It's not a third world country anymore. It's a developing country. A developing nation is what they would categorize it. And I was like, man, I can see myself like having my own area of the boat, having my own area, like where my sailboat is at, and I could just go for a couple of days and just be out at sea, just and just chill, just live life, maybe have a nice girl to go with, and just live my life that way. It's very simple. I've never even gone fishing. I've never really enamored myself around the sea life, but I feel like that's always been something that calls to my spirit and my nature. And I think I don't know. I was feeling this way because I mentioned this in my last video, but it feels like this Instagram, social media, you have to kind of participate. I almost want to say like you don't have to, like it's all BS. And we all know that it's BS, but yet we're forced to partake and participate in it because human beings, we love statuses. Most of us do anyways. We love statuses. We love knowing and predicting where people are. We like this like hierarchy of systems of people, and we can kind of measure certain people without really knowing them in a sense, at least from an online, I don't know, like an online sense, an online space. And I realize that especially like trying to appeal to everybody on Instagram it'll cripple and suffer you. It does, because I see a lot of people that just like they get so used to that validation. A lot of our women are like this actually. A lot of guys are like this too. You get used to that sense of validation that you get from others, from the form of digital media, right? But it's like one of those things. Whenever you meet these people in real life, or whenever you talk to some people, they're not who you thought they were. And a lot of that times that happens a lot more often. That's why online dating sucks. That's why like meeting people from an online medium and then meeting them in person is super underwhelming, because you need pheromones, you need attraction. I need to see how you act. I need to see how you laugh. I need to see how you react to things, your micro expressions. I need to know how you smell. Damn it. There's something so primal about that. Like, I need to know a woman's smell. I need to know if her musk, her sweaty, gunky smell, like if I'm even attracted to that. Cause there's like, you guys know what I mean? Like there's science there. And I don't know, like I was just thinking about that, and it kind of got to that point where I was like, you know what? Like, I hate that I have to play this game, but I'm gonna play it, but I won't buy into it. Like, I won't. You know how they say you have to play the game to change the game, and that's how I was thinking about it, right? Because I don't know. I'm very Machiavellian when I think, and I've always been that way since I was a kid. I've always been very, you know, kind of studying people, plotting in a sense, but not for mischievous purposes, more so just for the betterment of myself, which I guess you can argue is mischievous. I guess I'm kind of putting my dark triad or whatever out there. But no, like in a serious sense, I think it just kind of, it's like, okay, you do your thing and I'll play along for your little game, but this is some bullshit and I'm going to get the last laugh. That's how I think. And I think that's how we have to treat the social media stuff. We have to trick it. We have to spin it on its own head at some point, right? You have to allow the algorithms to work for you, not you work for it, right? And so I don't know what that looks like exactly, but just the sprout of that idea in my mind, I think that I think there's two things happening. I think that people are having to understand and learn how to adapt and evolve in an age where you're like being strong armed, you're being pulled hard to do so. You don't really get a chance to participate anymore. Some people say that you don't have to, but it's kind of like you isolate yourself socially and not being able to. I don't know. I feel like it kind of does tap into FOMO, but people are like, well, you have my phone, you know how to reach me. But it's like, look at where we're spending our time. We're spending our time. That is our third place. Like, the phone is our third place. That people are talking about, where's the third place? It's on the fucking 2 to 3 hours you spend on your screen time on all these apps. That's where the third place is. And so, how do we trick it to do that? I know I mentioned that was a big segue in my last video, but I think that's what kind of started this thought of like, I wanted like a huge part of my spirit just wants to take all that and just reject it and just chunk it in the air and just shoot it, But I also know that it's kind of like it's like a little game. You got to do a little dance with it. And if we're kind of making this more of a symbolism, imagery, metaphor type of thing, you could say that, you never dance with the devil. If you dance with the devil, you never win. Like, you always think you have one up on the devil. And I think that's true to an extent. I think that's right. I don't think necessarily this is, well, some people could argue. I honestly, maybe it is the devil. I don't know, man. But I just know that, you know, even if you're living in a devilish world, if you understand the traps and the tricks that the devil lays upon you or lays out there for everybody, it takes a third eye. It takes a spiritual kind of, I don't say awakening, but a spiritual perception to see through what can otherwise, misguide you. Dude, I locked this guy in here and he gets so mad at me, but he's spamming the door too, so we're like messed up. You can see he starts shooting me and stuff. It's kind of messed up. Um, Anyways, it's kind of a spiritual perception that you have, and I don't know, something about going back to what I was thinking, something about the water, having a sailboat, having that as a path of voyage soothes me because it's kind of like it just, I don't know. I don't know if it's just the blue or what it does, but it's kind of something I wanted to share. Maybe you guys have something that calls to you in the same way. Maybe it's hiking or some kind of something in nature in similar fashion. But yeah, um, I thought that was always so cool where people could just kind of go sail. I'm not talking about like a big boat or anything, but just actual sailing or like a sailboat in that sense. I think that's has always been pretty cool to me. But I don't know. Um, but yeah, I was just thinking about those things, and I don't know. I feel like all in all, just that feeling of being exhausted and having to work towards something, and who knows, maybe it being that's what kind of like drives me and gives me that fulfillment right now. Um, I don't know too much of. I feel like everybody else is kind of lost on that, but I think what happens there is that everything seems so like far away from you, and I think that as I've gotten a little bit older, I realize how, I won't say easily attainable, but how feasible, and it doesn't seem as far to reach out when you think about it, right? It seems like that in the moment, but when you start to plan and coordinate and little check boxes start to take off, it starts to become more real. And that's the hardest part, is like getting that momentum to start on the things that, let's say you have a goal to move somewhere, like move to a different place. You want to move out. That's a big one. You want to move out of your parents' place. And it's like all the little things that you don't know how to do are what it's actually what's going to keep you from driving and making that more of a reality. And I realize that a lot of people do this. This is a common triumph or trial of human beings to do. The only thing that's helped me in that process is just starting it, just doing a little bit of research, talking to people who have done it, and leveraging that experience from others, right? Because you're always gonna find a means of wiggling a way out of that. I really want to do that. Like when I do the sailboating thing, of course, maybe there's classes, maybe there's things I can learn. I was talking to that guy in Vegas. He was like, "Dude, this is so easy. Like it's not as hard as you think, and it's pretty simple." He's like, "I sailed across this sea and all this stuff." I'm like, "What?" Like it just can you conceptualize that for a second? Like he's talking about he sailed these, and I'm I was never a nature kid. I'm a city kid through and through. Even when I moved to Texas, or my mom moved to Texas, I never like I was still like very much indoors. I still played video games, and I never really played sports, or I never even gone camping before in a true fashion. So, there's a lot of things in an outdoors things that I don't really have a connection to, and I think my spirit yearns for that. And maybe the water's what naturally calls to it. I am from the islands in the Caribbean and stuff, and what's so crazy is that when I was in Dominican Republic the last time I was there, I was at the beach. It was late at night, and I was with somebody at the time, and they were also trying to swim. Yeah, it was a girl. They were trying to swim, and late at night, and I was like, and I was okay with it, but you have to understand, like most of you do, when the water is dark, when it's nighttime and it's the ocean, it's dark. Like it becomes a little bit more of a cautious thing. Like primally, you're like, whoa. Now this girl was a swimmer, right? And at least at some point in her life, so she was very confident in swimming in the water. But I was like, you know what it is? It's like, as a guy, I felt like I was trying to be precautious and I wasn't trying to be too adventurous and I was trying to be the more reasonable one in the situation too. But, and I think about that because I think about that girl who actually at the same resort I went to, at the same beach, at this around the same time, she ended up disappearing. And the last time she was seen was swimming around in the ocean. And I couldn't shake that story out of my head because there's no lifeguards at 2, 3 a.m. There's nobody there. You're the only people there. And I remember she started getting like pretty far, like getting close to where the nets are. If you ever been to like a resort area or the beach by the water. And I'm not a swimmer, guys. Like I've never learned how to actually swim. I won't drown, I can swim around. I know how to float, but I'm not a swimmer. So I was like, bruh, one bad current and I'm so cooked and so is she. Right? Because most people think they're strong until they hit a current and then you're gassed. And so basically I kind of had to, I had to convince her that, hey, why don't we head back? This is getting kind of not crazy, but I didn't even say that. I just said something along the lines of, we should head back. It's getting late, whatever, something like that. And so we did. But, I think about that. I think about certain moments. I've almost drowned before at a beach too. I've gotten pulled in crazy by a current one time and it like pulled me hard. And I'll never forget, this was in a beach I think in Connecticut. And it was so bad. Like I had to be, thank God, one of my dad's friends, he pulled me out of the water. I was just like, I was trying to come up and I couldn't. And that's so scary when you're trying to, you take for granted, right? Like you being able to breathe until it's like taken away from you forcibly. And gosh, man, I wasn't necessarily scared of the beach or anything like that, but I was a lot more cautious. I was like, okay, this is real. Like you got to treat it with respect, But I don't know, man. And maybe it got me thinking now. Maybe I want to try swimming at some point in my life too. It'd be good to know how to like swim at a decent level. I think that's pretty fun too. Anyways, guys, I just wanted to share those kind of things. I'm sure a lot of you have things that you want to do. And I'm just here like, just go against the mode, man. Like, I feel like the spirit of us calls us to do certain things, and we're so dragged down by, this is so bad nowadays. We can't do this anymore. And look how this is going, and people aren't having as many kids. Dude, fuck all that noise, man. I'm so tired of hearing this. I'm so tired of the thoughts and opinions of people who just kind of also fall into it and pray into it, like. My friend, he always says, be the change you want to see. Be the thing that moves the mold, right? Like, how can we all complain about the same things when none of us are doing said thing? And it always sticks with me because it's always like, it's true. Like, we always want to complain about shit, but we don't want to get shit done either. Like, we don't want to do shit about it. It's like, it's always about that, the censorship of, everybody, it's like, you see somebody getting suppressed or censored. And eventually you see more people getting suppressed and censored and you don't speak up, but eventually by the time it's happening to you, nobody wants to speak up for you because everybody's already been silenced. I feel like that's what happened to society. And we just got to speak up more. We got to rub some shoulders. We got to bug people off of us. I'm tired of people telling me how to think and what to know, or what research to look up and this and that and the third. And I'm not saying to like reject all of it, but when I think about things, when I think about sailing in the ocean and the night sky and the peaceful, calm waters, and I'm just there with, whoever my wife or whatever it may be, or even some friends or some homies or just people that like I really care about and love, and we're just there and we're just in solitude and peace and everything is still, and something about that kind of calls to my spirit to be like, this can happen. And it's not something about the water says it's not that bad. Storms happen in the water. Bad storms happen. Waves get super high. Things crash and burn and it tumbles down. Things get destroyed and wildlife is moving. Erosion happens, but it always calms down. There's always sunshine that happens afterwards. It's like nothing ever happens, like back to normal. And I feel like we're kind of in that like waves are crashing up. There's erosion happening. We're just in that pocket of life, and you're gonna have to find stability and everything rocking around and everything moving. And the only way you can do that is by holding on tight to that vision and knowing that everything is gonna be okay, right? Because it's always in your power to do and control whatever happens. If I start letting go, then things are I become the wave. I start becoming the wave. I don't allow myself to anchor down, say this is going to be good. Let's just enjoy it while it's here. Let's study it. Let's see how the wave moves. Maybe we can move with the wave, right? I don't know. I think about these things because there's so much things that are happening out there on a day-to-day basis. We got news, politics, all these things driving. We got male female dynamics. We got jobs. We got things being more expensive. We got there's so many things, but anyways, I just want to reiterate one more time. You know, I have a video where it's like you have more control than you think, and I think that's always going to be my message when it comes to this channel, right? You know, you do have more control than you think, and if your spirit is calling you to do something, don't let it go. Like, you have to grasp onto that. You have to fight for it, right? It's like the saying where so many people are dead but are still alive, right? And they died a long time ago, and so many people are living for nothing. And that's what happens when you have kids sometimes, is that you start living for them. One thing I don't like, people always say like, oh man, my kids are my world, they're my everything. Man, fuck them kids, man. And not like I won't ever be a father, I won't love and appreciate and cherish my children, but at the same time, it's like they're gonna be adults and they're gonna leave one day. That's what you're preparing them for. You're not preparing them to always rely on mommy and daddy and all that stuff. That's so backwards. And I'm glad that my dad, he understood this. He kind of like allowed me to be my own person after some time, and just kind of always allowed me independently to shape and form my own ideas while kind of steering me and guiding me in the right direction. And we're not the same person. We don't agree on everything. We don't see eye to eye. I feel like sometimes he vicariously tries to live through me because he's, like what he would do, granted my position, and making the choices that he wished he would have made. And so sometimes I have to assert myself and be like, hey, no, like I'm my own person still at the end of the day. And that happens naturally. And I almost can't wait to have a son in that sense, because I know I'll be the same way. And it's kind of funny seeing how life works that way. And yeah, I don't know, man. Kind of threw a lot of things out there. At the end of it, guys, I would say, understand that we're in it for the long ride. It's ups and downs. This life is crazy. We're in a world that has never really been seen in this likes before, but there's always a renaissance, right? There's always a purging that happens after a mass time of just disgusting irritability of the way human beings are. People naturally can fix things. We are human beings. We can adapt. We were made to survive, and we have spirit inside of us, right? Always latch onto that. Always keep that as a part of you. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed my little ramble, my rant. This is White Pill Brian signing off. Like the video if you liked it. Don't if you don't. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.